evening, everyone. I would like to call the Ferndale City Council meeting to order for Monday, July the 11th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Council members Baker. Here. Galloway.
Here.
Lennon. Here. Piana.
Here.
Mayor Coulter.
Here, yes, we have a quorum. Thank you very much. Our first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening?
I would move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Baker, supported by Galloway. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council members Baker. Yes. Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. We have an agenda. We had one presentation this evening from the Ferndale Public Schools, but they are not here with us this evening. School is actually in recess, and they asked for the night off, and we graciously allowed them to do that. So we're going to skip our presentation, and we'll go right to call the audience. It is 7:36, and as most people know, call the audience is up to 30 minutes now, and more time if needed at the end of the meeting before our call to council. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less to any topic that is not on the agenda, as you would get an opportunity to comment on those items at that time in the agenda. Please state your name and address, or write it on the sign-in sheet in the back so that the city clerk could record the information. Is there anyone here from the audience that would like to speak to council this evening? Good evening.
Good evening. Chris Hughes from the Ferndale DDA Communications and Marketing. Normally I have a presentation, but I just thought since I'm here, I'll give one last shout out about a couple of cool things that are happening downtown this weekend. One thing that happened today, I believe, or over the weekend, is a Torino Espresso Bar open. So go over and get your morning Java, and I think they are open till later at night as well. So at the corner of Bermuda and East 9 Mile, downstairs of the Lofts. The weekend we have the Live Green Fair. That's on on West 9 between Woodward and Allen, and that's green providers providing things for people who want to live green more. And that's all 3 days on the weekend, and they can check our Downtown Ferndale website if they want more information. And on July 21st, we have a very fun event. It's really doggone good fun. July 21st in downtown Ferndale, FIDO does Ferndale, 5 to 9. Come on down. It's going to be a blast. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council this evening? Good evening, my friend.
Dennis Hepner, 7 Sisters, Florida, Ferndale. I just have a short public service announcement. On Saturday, between 10 and 2 p.m., we're having a voter registration. It'll be in front of the Ferndale Public Library from 10 to 2 on Saturday. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you. Our County Commissioner, Craig Covey, is with us this evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members and staff. Pardon my casual clothes tonight. And as I do every year as a committed cat lover, I protest the dog show in Ferndale. Yes. I agree with it. I agree. With regards to county business, I have just one thing. At our last meeting, we tried desperately to discuss a proclamation in support of the Detroit International River crossing, but we were thwarted in that attempt, weren't even allowed to discuss it or vote on it. So trying to help the region in terms of business. We did have an excellent presentation from the county executive, and the budget is balanced for the next 3 years through 2014. So a little bit of good news there.
Great.
The one thing I want to share, if I may, Mayor and the council members, is it is time once again for the 15th annual Ferndale Pub Crawl. This is an event that began literally 15 years ago with fans of Ferndale starting a pub crawl where about 35 people went to 6 or 7 clubs downtown. This year we expect upwards of 1,500 people to register for the crawl. It's a walking tour of all the restaurants and clubs downtown. No motor vehicles, of course, are ever permitted. It's 21 and over. And as usual, it begins at Boogie Fever. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. I think the owner of Boogie Fever is here tonight. Always good to see Mark McConnell. We will be registering people up until 9:30 that evening. Crowds go out throughout the evening. The Ferndale Police will be escorting us and auxiliary police. We believe at this point we have 18 bars, clubs, and restaurants participating, so we recommend that people pace themselves, of course. New locations, venues this year include the Grasshopper, Bosco, and Valentine's. And our sponsors include Bacardi, Boogie Fever, Rosie O'Grady's, Diablo's Cantina, Dino's, and the Grasshopper. And so I encourage folks, if they're interested, to come out. All the money we raise, again, all goes to charity this year, including the Michigan AIDS Coalition, Fern Care. We usually give money to the Ferndale Community Foundation and perhaps the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Committee this year. But all of the $10 entry fee goes to charity, and it's always a fun night. So, and traditionally, every year in the last 15 years, going back to Mayor Geddert, the mayor attends and sends off the first few waves of people. So, Mr. Mayor, we'd love to have you there.
You told me that, and I'm happy to carry on the tradition, and I will be there to fire the starting pistol.
I think all the people at the table, with the exception of Mr. Wallenweber, have been to the pub crawl. You would enjoy it as well.
I'm coming this year. What's the date?
I'm sorry. It is Friday, July the 29th. It's always the last Friday of July, and you might want to have a designated way home or spend the night in Ferndale. It's a long drive back to where you're going. But we've always had a safe time, and it's just a very fun event that promotes the downtown.
I can't believe it's 15 years. The time goes by fast,
Yeah,
but
we were
you've done a
young
great
when we
job of
started
organizing
this.
that. It's grown every year.
Councilman Lennon, you usually help us send the groups out. Can we count on you again?
Certainly.
Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Great job. Thank you. Anyone else like to address council this evening? Good evening, sir.
Hi, my name's Christian Vandemer. I live at 1692 Jarvis. I just actually wanted to say, contrary to the last meeting, thank you for improving the sidewalks on 9 Mile Road from Wanda to the city. When you ride your bicycle, it's a huge difference. I just had one quick question, maybe to direct to City to Works, maybe direct to the Green Committee. I've been saving waste oil on a lot of the cars that I've been working on. I mean, it's been in a neat, clean manner. Basically, my friend's going to diesel recycle it, supposedly, but kind of gave me an idea of what the city could do for the diesel recycling. I know there is money to be made in waste oil with so many people recycling waste oil into, like, not biodiesel, but recycled diesel fuel. Just something to think about, and maybe, you know, give the city a greener idea for waste oil and things like that. And that's about all that I wanted to say. Just make a pretty good suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Anyone else for call to audience? All right, seeing none, we will close call to audience, and we will move on to the consent agenda. All the items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted in one motion, unless anyone would like to remove anything from the consent agenda at this point. Those would be item A, approval of the minutes of the regular and special meetings held June 27th as submitted by the city clerk. Approval of the memorandum of understanding with the Michigan Municipal League Foundation in regard to the Shared Public Services Initiative project. Approval of reappointment of Dan Martin and Greg Pollica to the Fire and Police Board for terms ending May 1st, 2012. I see Dan is here. Thank you, Dan, for your willingness to do that again. Approval of a $50 non-refundable advance payment for wedding ceremonies. Approval to adopt the resolution granting concessionaire licenses for James Mastrangelo of Honeybee Enterprises to operate a food truck at 23300 Woodward Avenue from July 16th, 2011 to July 15th, 2012 on Saturdays and Sundays from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Approval of an annual service agreement with Chemco Products in the amount of $3,025 for a chemical treatment program for steam boiler and potable water as submitted by the Recreation Director. Approval of the resolution proclaiming July as Parks and Recreation Month. approval of the 2011 Ferndale Woodward Dream Cruise street and parking lot closures and schedule of events. Item I, approval of a contract with Parkmobile for auto parking system. J, approval to require the owners of the parking lots at the northeast corner of Leland and East 9 Mile Road and at 503 East 9 Mile Road to replace deteriorated sidewalk flags and driveway approaches by August 15, 2011. Approval of the resolution for the city's request for reimbursement from Oakland County under the West Nile Virus Program. L, approval to fill one vacant DPW Grade 1 position. M, approval to purchase 2 international dump trucks with snow plows for $234,350 from the Tri-County International Trucks of Dearborn, Michigan, under the State of Michigan Purchase Program. And finally, O, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to the review of the Council Finance Committee. I would again give people an opportunity to either pull anything from the agenda or else a motion would be in order.
I move we approve the consent agenda as stated.
Support.
So moved by Lennon, supported by Piana. Any discussion or comments about the consent agenda? If not, Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Lennon,
Yes.
Galloway,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Baker, Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you, that passes. Our next item of business is the regular agenda, item A, consideration of amendments to the noise ordinance. I think our city attorney, Dan Christ, is going to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and council will recall last summer there were, and actually previously, concerns raised by residents with respect to noise levels, both in residential and in the commercial districts of the city. Last summer, the DDA studied that issue, and council also, in its September meeting, considered whether or not ordinance amendments to the city's noise ordinance was warranted. At that time, last September, council elected to bring on board a noise consultant, acoustical engineer, Kalano and Saha engineers, to study the issue of the city's existing noise ordinance and make recommendations with respect to any suggested changes to that ordinance. Mr. Brown from Kalano and Saha is here in the audience. He has had an opportunity to review the city's existing noise ordinance, has met with staff regarding certain changes to the definitions as well as changes to the maximum permissible limits set forth in the existing ordinance, and has also drafted additional regulatory ordinances for council's consideration.
Thank you. And just, again, in terms of the process, a subcommittee of this council was formed, is that right? Or
it was not a subcommittee. There was a committee with respect to city staff, which did include council members Piana and council members Galloway, representatives from the city manager's office, the police department, DDA. I was also involved in the committee, and I'm not sure if Parks and Department of Public Works was present or not.
And is it my understanding that that committee has met to review this recommendation and has...
They have reviewed the that draft.
Thank you.
Both drafts.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any comments or from council on this issue?
Well, when we last looked at this ordinance 7 or 8 years ago, maybe now, Ferndale's downtown was still evolving and changing. At that point, we didn't have a lot of outdoor patios or cafes. Certainly the activity wasn't as great as it is now, and we hadn't had a very detailed sound ordinance at that time. Big problems were where Villanova was now with music emanating from the insides out. It seems as though the challenges have changed a bit as our downtown has changed, and we're trying to adopt a sound ordinance that fits and recognizes those changes. So toward that end, with the input of both certainly concerned citizens and people speaking at the podium there, and also input from our DDA and business owners, and hearing their concerns, we've tried to craft an ordinance that both reflects the new reality and different uses of the downtown, but also, works with what we had and creates a more precise ordinance that's perhaps hopefully more easily enforced and helps to address the problem, recognizing though that we're never going to make anybody perfectly happy as long as we have residential areas in close proximity to the downtown areas. So the changes that are being proposed, we believe, go a long ways towards addressing the situation, but undoubtedly, there's going to be some concerns, and it's not going to make everyone happy. But what we're trying to do is strike a balance between business interests and residential demands, and they're both equally important. The City Council values a vibrant downtown, but it also recognizes the importance of our residential neighborhoods, and balancing those two is what we're after here. So we'll get into some of the details in a bit, but Councilwoman Piana might have a few comments.
Yeah, I wanted to just cover what has transpired over the year or so that we have been looking at this issue, and explain that our approach has been pretty thorough in terms of soliciting feedback, discussing the issues, and just to kind of give an overview of what has transpired. In July of 2010 was when the City Council heard from a primary group of residents who voiced their concerns to Council. This prompted the City to start looking at the noise concerns. The DDA Board of Directors started discussing noise as well. Throughout the summer, July and August, the Ordinance Committee, which is different from the Noise Subcommittee, the Ordinances Committee is comprised of Councilman Galloway, the City Manager, and the lawyer. And many times, what's that? And Councilman Lennon. And many times when there is ordinance considerations, they get sent to this committee for review. So it went to there for review. Through August, through November, the DDA continued to discuss the noise issues at their board meetings and apparently some committee meetings. Council held a special meeting to discuss the noise, and the DDA Board of Directors held a special meeting to discuss the noise. And then in 2010, November, the Council selects an expert sound engineer to review the ordinance and provide recommendations. And the DDA held a public forum to hear from the residents who lived around in the downtown. And then in January 2011, we started commencing the subcommittee, the Noise Issues Subcommittee, which was comprised of me, Councilman Galloway, the City Manager, the DDA Director, the Police Chief, the City Lawyer, and our sound engineer consultant, Mr. Darren Brown, who is here tonight to answer questions. And then we met through March and April and June of 2011. The DDA Board of Directors reviewed our draft ordinance write-ups from the consultant, and throughout this whole period we have received countless emails, and I've had private discussions with homeowners who've invited me into their homes so I could hear the issues, and Scott has been ongoing and listening to these issues. So I have to say that I think this has been pretty comprehensive review of this issue, and so I think we've covered all of our bases, and I think we understand everybody's interests and issues concerning the recommended changes that we're going to discuss today. So,
other comments, and also from the audience as well. If there are people from the audience who would like to address this issue this evening, this would be the appropriate time as well.
Is there going to be any type of presentation from our sound engineer, or is he just here for questions?
I think it might be, if there's a motion on the table, it would be appropriate at that time for him to come and answer questions, unless you want this to be that time, since the council will be discussing the merits of the ordinance. I can give an overview real quickly about some key recommended changes that the consultant provided, and that are that we needed to clarify and add new definitions of what the sound means, and we've also added some other definitions that were sort of ambiguous throughout the ordinance, such as daytime hours, nighttime hours. What do those definitions mean? We also talked about the decibel levels, which is why we hired a technical engineer, because that's where you talk about bass and the levels of sound that were causing some consternation between the police department and the residents and the business owners about how sound was being measured and the devices that were being used to actually measure the sound. And then look at how we change where we measure and how we measure taking sound measurements. So those were kind of the key recommended changes that came out of this ordinance. And then some of the activities that remained the same, just to give you an overview, is that were some of concern to people in the beginning of this, beginning of looking at this whole issue, was that the music still can be played in the downtown area, marching bands won't be affected, the school PA system won't be affected, outdoor concerts and special events are still have to follow the special events ordinance, where council has the ability to waive any, can waive the outdoor sound ordinance for that particular event. So a lot of the things that we value remain significantly the same.
Is the consultant is here, right? Oh, there you are. I'm sorry. You want to just kind of come up and just briefly maybe explain your recommendation, how you arrived at the 5 decibels, and just kind of give us a snapshot of your recommendation? Appreciate you coming this evening, by the way.
Sure, no problem. My name is Darren Brown, by the way. I am employed by Colano and Saha Engineers. So your main question is with the change in levels. Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess just to understand this a little bit, I come at that point from 2 different directions. One is the way the sound level measured in the city of Ferndale is a little bit atypical from most municipalities. And that is, a lot of municipalities set their sound limits as a level not to be exceeded. So that means at any point in time, a sound level is not supposed to exceed the criteria. The way the city of Ferndale has done their ordinance is they want to take an average of the sound level over a defined period of time, which is fine. That's completely acceptable. It's just a little bit counter to the way most municipalities do it. The other item is the limits in the city of Ferndale are higher than average. I think if you took a rough average of most municipalities in the state of Michigan, particularly in the southeast area of Michigan, you'd find that you'd have a daytime average of approximately 65 dB and a nighttime average of approximately 55 dB. So with a daytime limit of 75 dB, it's up there. And then also add on to that you're taking the average over a defined period of time. In this case, it's a 1-minute average. You kind of artificially raise that limit compared to other municipalities. So I was recommending, without measuring in the community, but observing some of the sound levels that had been measured by the police department, that the limits could be lowered by 5 dB, help protect the residents a little bit better, but also give businesses the opportunity to do their business.
For the layperson, what is a dB of 70 approximately? What does that sound like?
It's recognized that average speech at a distance of 3 to 5 feet is approximately 60 to 65 dB. The level of 70 dB would be, maybe strong speech, or maybe it'd be a lawnmower, a reasonable residential grade lawnmower at a distance of about 100 feet or so. It's hard to, give you that explanation without giving you a specific example, but roughly that's how you can characterize it.
Thank you. Okay. Yes,
just one
to the consultant,
Just
sure.
one other question along the lines of the overview that you just gave. Thank you. There was also a recommendation to change the way that we were measuring things?
No, actually, I didn't recommend any changes in the way it's measured. Actually, I recommended that the ordinance reflect better definitions of way the sound's currently being measured. Currently, if the ordinance is a little bit ambiguous. In fact, Chief Collins told me that they measured it a certain way, and then I read through the ordinance and I was a little bit confused because I would have technically interpreted it differently. So based on the way they had understood the way the ordinance was supposed to be and the way they were measuring, I amended or recommended changes to the ordinance to reflect that.
Thank you. Any other questions for him for now? Thank you, sir. Don't go anywhere yet, just in case, but, all right, I did mention that the public would be invited to comment as well, and sir, thanks for your patience.
Thank you. Dave Nicholson, 310 West Saratoga. My house is on the north side of Saratoga, about halfway between Woodward and Allen. My back gate leads out onto the downtown parking lot on Troy, about 120 yards from Rosie's. First, let me say that I rarely hear any music coming from Rosie's. Never had any problem with noise from that establishment nor any other business downtown. If you're outside or near an open window and you listen carefully, you may hear the sound of people's voices from the different patio, but with rare exceptions, it's never more than a very low murmur. And even the exceptions I wouldn't consider intrusive. Also, since becoming aware of the noise controversy, I've made it a habit to monitor the noise at the corner of Troy and Allen, and on different days, different times. Although the murmur is louder, it strikes me that a reasonable person would not find the noise level to be intrusive. I know former Mayor Covey mentioned during a meeting that he had ridden his bike to Allen and Troy many nights and found very little noise. Also, the people who live closest to the patio have said in front of council that the noise is not a problem. In my opinion, the noise levels at the affected people's homes is just not that loud. I don't think that, a more intrusive problem might be the noise made by patrons coming out of downtown establishments late at night and talking, sometimes yelling on their way to their vehicles. This does happen regularly, and if you're close enough to your house, it can be intrusive. Though this isn't a problem with me, I figure it comes with being downtown. In my opinion, the noise level at the affected people's homes is just not that loud. I don't think that the music or the noise from the patios is really the problem. I think there is anger among a small minority of the people who live on the streets that surround the downtown, largely having to do with the behavior of some patrons as they enter the residential district, and with the general inconvenience of the parking situation. I believe this anger has been misdirected to the only outlet seen as available. Ferndale has had a stunning transformation for the good over the last 20 years. A vibrant and sometimes noisy nightlife downtown has been a key part of that transformation. I believe the proposed changes to the noise ordinance, strictly enforced, might put that transformation at risk. So I'm asking you to please vote no to any change to the current noise ordinance. Also, should you think a change be necessary, I would ask you to consult with the voters of Ferndale through a vote before making any changes to the current ordinance. Finally, I'd like to say that Rosie O'Grady's and Cantina Diablo, 30 yards from my back gate, have been very good neighbors. When I walk out my back gate onto Troy, I find a busy, clean, attractive, and prosperous street. In large part, this is due to the investment made in Ferndale by the owner of these two businesses. In light of that investment, a change in the current ordinance would have to be considered a slap in the face. We need to encourage investment in Ferndale, and treating one of our largest investors in such a manner cannot help but put Ferndale in a bad light. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think he was talking about you.
He was.
Good evening.
My name is Brian Kramer. I own Rosie O'Grady's and Cantina Diablos. I now live at 181 Ardmore, Ferndale, Michigan. I'm a Ferndale resident now, and I vote. I'd like to start tonight. Anybody that's here tonight for good or bad is not here because of me. I didn't get a chance to put anything out. I had 50 people showing up tonight. I got a text message saying this was not going to be on the agenda tonight. So all the people I had showing up to say, hey, this is not a problem, I didn't get to show up. When you guys had the last thing in front of City Council, I had so many people show up, my kitchen said, Brian, stop having people come in. We had a big party outside the back of the City Council. Okay, so anybody here tonight, good or bad, has nothing to do with me. I'd like to start with my biggest issue, and continues to be my biggest issue. It's not Rosie O'Grady's, it's not Brian Kramer, is the special land, or the special exemptions. I'm here every day, 365 days. The parking revenue has quadrupled. I bring 10,000 people a week to downtown Ferndale. Even if you say, Brian, half those people are Ferndale residents, it's an extra 5,000 people I bring down. It doesn't make sense that somebody that invests $7 million doesn't get the best that the city council has to offer, but somebody that can come in 1 or 2 days a year for a small group of special interest people can get a variance to the sound ordinance, okay? If it's good for me, it should be good for anybody. You shouldn't carve out a special exemption because it's important to somebody. Okay? It should be the business owner that supports the city 365 days. It shouldn't even be an option if I'm going to have a fair down here that you get a one-time special use, Brian, to quote-unquote screw the neighbors. Shouldn't be. That's always been my biggest issue with this thing is you guys do this carve-out. If it's good for me, it's good for anybody coming in for one day because I support Ferndale. I am Ferndale. I'm Brian Kramer. It's not right. And I don't say like I'm Brian Kramer. I say because I support the city. There's nobody that calls me up that I don't give back to them. And you should change this ordinance to what it is. It's the Brian Kramer Sherry Wells ordinance. It's a small group of residents, okay, that are personally attacking me. I've been threatened. I've been called everything in the book by some of these people, okay? I spend $30,000 a year to have a guy out there take measuring readings, okay? How many times did the City of Ferndale Police come out there 2 to 3 times a week? And you're worried about your city budget, that they sit there and do these sound measurements? How many violations have you gotten, Brian? 0. How many times have you been over? 0. Never a ticket, never a violation. All I do is comply. I came to the city, after the city came to me and they said, we spent, I'm making up the number, but it was like $100,000 on this master plan. And the master plan called for 9 Mile and Allen to be a restaurant with an outdoor patio. The city comes to me and says, Brian, will you make the investment? $7 million later, a special land use later, which Mr. Chris, I don't even know I got the special land use because it says, this is my sound ordinance. I'm an attorney look at it. I don't even know if this thing applies to me and you're making it for me. I got a special land use. It didn't say it's going to change. It didn't say, you know what, Brian, you'll be a good guy and change it. Okay? But I go out of my way. At 9 Mile and Allen, those walls are supposed to be 15 feet. I spent $5,000 on a special sound, on a sound engineer. And he came in and he said, Brian, you got to build this wall. It could have been 12 feet. I don't remember. Look at the old blueprints. And the Ferndale appearance review, we don't want to separate the downtown from the residents. We don't want that big wall there, Brian. All right, cost me $20,000. I won't put the wall up, but who's going to deal with the fallout? I had residents in Ferndale come to my house in Washington Township. I went to a meeting on Troy Street where they took pictures of my house where my family lives. And they said, you have the right to live in private. Yeah, I picked that house. I picked to move out to Washington Township. 11 homes, that's the one I picked. Accountability. I don't come to the city, I live in Ferndale now. Will you get rid of the railroad track? Because it keeps me up at night. Will you close down the mobile gas station? Because it keeps me up at night. Will you pay me the extra $10 a week to have my lawn guy pick up my lawn because the trash from the mobile comes down? Accountability. I bought that house at 181 Ardmore. I knew what was there. There should be accountability. We've lost accountability. You got a discount for buying that house so close to Woodward, so close to the downtown. One person should not get special interest. You say the DDA was in favor of this? I was at the meeting. I'm on the board. No. You say the downtown business owners? 20 business owners, I could tell you, Brian, I don't want the sound ordinance to change. We're not talking restaurant owners. First they come for us, okay? When that issue is resolved and that is expunged, they're going to go after something else. They're special land people. They're special interest people. They have their little agendas. They come after us. Brian, it's a small group of people. I hope that you vote no to this. I hope that you come back to it and say, let's go some of these things, because 5 decimals will not make a change. It won't change anything. And she'll be back here next week. And you're going to spend another $7,000 that the city doesn't have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address us this evening? Good evening.
Yes, I've already been introduced. Sherry Wells on West Troy. All the Sundays last summer in August and into September were loud at the corner of Troy and Allen and the several hundreds of feet around there. On an excessively loud September Sunday last fall, we had several of us who had separately called the police about the noise by Mr. Kramer's establishment at Rosie O'Grady's. The officer's written report said he could begin hearing the music around the 400 block. That begins at the 8th house from the corner of Allen and Troy. 301 feet from Allen, over the noise of his engine. The A-weight reading at that southwest corner sidewalk was 73 decibels at 8:11 p.m. The proposal is for 70 residential. It will make a difference. Not as much as I would like. I like what Mr. Brown said about the more average sounds, but it will make a difference. After 10 o'clock, the decibel reading, because the officer was kind enough to come back, was 66 decibels, so the 60 would be adequate there, I believe. The model noise ordinance for the state of Michigan in 2000 was much lower, so this is not, as Mr. Brown also said, this is not a huge sacrifice for anyone to make. Dearborn has the same levels that you're now being proposed to. Shortly after opening, we neighbors have been at this for 2 years, first expressing our concerns ahead of time. It's one thing to have the customers come out at 2 in the morning, yelling, screaming, banging their car doors when it was further down the hall, down the street. We'd roll over, go back to sleep, never bothered calling the police because by the time they'd be there, all the noisy customers would be gone. We lived with it, okay? Shortly after they opened, my daughter went to call about the noise, and a person working there named Wendy said, I was just about to have it turned down when I stopped to answer your call. So they can do it. And I recall writing a letter of appreciation for her work to him. I called one time just before 2 o'clock on a Sunday. I said, I can vaguely hear some background music. I hear conversational levels from the customers, no shouting, very conversational. This is perfect. At 2 o'clock, they hiked it all up. Villanova at first, without decibel readings, was causing a problem. 2 other neighbors, not Sherry Wells, had called the police about them. The police had worked with them even before they started learning how to use their meters, and Villanova turned it down because they wanted to be a good business neighbor. We've had people on Gardendale, Marshall, Pearson, 200 petition signatures, who are people who are concerned about the noise. Some of them, as my daughter said, don't want to live here where we live, but they have friends who do, and they know what it sounds like because they've been up here. We can't be in our own living rooms or finished basements and hear our own televisions or music over that. The neighbor who can't be here tonight because she's a nurse and she's working has kindergartners who had to go to the 1 o'clock kindergarten. Next fall, they're going to be in first grade. She needs to be able to get them up in the morning. This is something I bought. It's for underneath a washing machine to control vibration. I have one of these under every foot of my bed. It perceptibly, not much, but it perceptibly helped the vibration coming through the ground into my bedroom. This is called damping. This is something that a business owner can do as a cost of business, and what I understand the Royal Oak is requiring the new Cantina Diablos. And it's not only the patios, it's not only in the summer when the 18-year-old who spoke to you in February of 2010, that was over a year ago, said it's coming through the walls, it's coming through the ground, it's beating so much she can't get to sleep until 3 in the morning. And had to retake classes at a later time at my expense.
You're nearing your time limit, if you could come to a conclusion.
And the special events increase it maybe 10 decibels, but if 301 feet can, 73 decibels can be heard 301 feet or more, then something that's 10 over for your commercial or special events should be loud enough to be heard all the way down Woodward to Allen.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, I'm Ann Muller. It's nice to meet you. I haven't met you before. But I just want to say that I'm the 3rd generation of Mullers in the community, and I grew up here. And it was a delightful, wonderful experience to grow up in Ferndale. And I now live in the house. I've been here 62 years, and I want you to pay attention and please do something for us. The man that was up here said, well, I don't experience any of the noise. Well, I live 3 houses from Rosie's. My problem is where the speakers are tilted towards the alley, it's like a sound tunnel. I can't sleep up in my upstairs bedroom anymore, and I've got central air. Unfortunately, I have to close up my house. I like fresh air, but to be able to tolerate, and I still hear the noise with my new windows, my air conditioning, I have a new roof, and it's not only the noise of the sound of the music, it's people when they leave the bar at night and they're slamming doors. I don't know if you know, they tailgate in the parking lot behind my house on 9 Mile and also the one on Allen. So the noise goes on until 3 a.m. I think Rosie's, Mr. Kramer put a lot of money into his 2 restaurants. They look gorgeous. I just want to be peaceful, him be happy, him run his establishment, and I'm able to live in my home, which I truly love, in a community that I truly love. And my family has put a lot into this community. My great-grandparents, they were the fundraisers over at the local Methodist church. That's why we have that beautiful church in Ferndale. My mother worked at the PTA. That's why we have all the parks in Ferndale for the kids to enjoy. And my family has worked with many committees and groups and done a lot for the city. So I hope the city will help me as much as my family has helped the city to make it what it is today. Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Richard Wilcock, 1615 West Marshall. My wife and I happen to be business owners in downtown Ferndale. And being business owners, we know the money that Mr. Kramer put into his business. We know the money that he spent in fees to this city to get the city to approve his plans and approve the building of his business. And it's ridiculous that a handful of people can come in here, cause us, number one, to spend money we don't have on this ordinance, and number two, go against a business that has done nothing but try to improve our downtown area. That's my first point. Last year, the night of the pub crawl, which is one of the busiest nights of the year for the bars in Ferndale, at 11 o'clock at night, my wife and I went and stopped our car in front of Sherry Wells' house. We could hear the crickets. And as far as doors slamming, I've got the worst neighbor in the world, and that happens to be the city of Ferndale. And I would like any of you at 3 o'clock in the morning when they're dumping snow to come over and listen to the noise that I have to put up with, yet the city is above their own ordinance. And Mr. Christ has told me that. So please consider going back. Maybe there can be some tweaks made to the existing ordinance. But the existing ordinance, if it is used the way it's supposed to, is all that we need. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public that would like to address the board?
Hi, I'm Ryan Murray, 1396 Spencer. I'm going to be brief because, I'm sure everybody's anxious to get moving on with this, but I moved to Ferndale in 2006. I've only been here a short time, but one of the reasons I moved here was because of the vibrant downtown. The Ferndale that I know, the Ferndale that I've come to love, is not just a sleepy bedroom community. It has a vibrant, exciting, fun downtown, and that is greatly contributed to by the businesses that are downtown. The sound levels in the current ordinance, now the average sound level thing obviously throws a lot of stuff out the window there, but just the numbers themselves, they're pretty reasonable. And if we were to actually tweak the overall rules as the consultant has come up with, as far as, specifying things better, fleshing things out. The current sound levels themselves would probably be sufficient. I mean, we are not downtown Dearborn, okay? We don't have a huge gap between the businesses and the residents there. It's tight, it's packed in. But, I mean, that's part of what makes it great. So anyways, I would like to encourage you to vote no on the current, the sound ordinance up for vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public that would like to address us this evening? Further questions or comments from council?
I have a comment, a couple comments. I want to make clear that I think from Councilman Galloway's and my perspective is that these changes really balances the interests of everyone, not a single person or business. While it may have started out that way, and a lot of the people who have come to council to complain may be a small minority, and I would agree that some of the comments I've made and the things that I've heard have been excessive and have downright crossed the line of obsessive. And setting those aside and hearing all the other complaints besides Rosie's, Villanova, Club 9, and other establishments, this is a broader view look at the ordinance. And so this is, for me, projecting at 10 years from now, how do we change the ordinance, because it's been almost a decade since we looked at it, and preparing to having more outdoor cafes to continue growing the vibrant downtown. So it was important for me that we take a longer, broader view than what the instigation scenario has brought us to looking at this ordinance. In particular, we also heard from residents who live in the mixed-use buildings in downtown. So they came to the DD public forums, so it's not the small minority that have been consistent. So between all the emails, discussions, private conversations, goes definitely beyond what we've heard at council. And I think that's why I see this as a very comprehensive review and understanding of issues from the residents. So that is my position on this in terms of looking at the ordinance. And technically, these are tweaks, maybe not for the point of view of the decibel level, but in terms of clarifying the ambiguous language in there, providing the definitions. These are the changes and tweaks that get us the next 10 years to accommodate future growth. And to me, that is important. And some of the best use of our dollars that we have spent with the sound engineer.
Others on council? Councilman Lennon?
Yes, sir. To begin with, I thought this all could have been handled in-house. I voted no for hiring a consultant, but that's another issue. However, I appreciate Mr. Kramer's investment in our city, but I don't think this is just solely about money. It's not about money. It's about quality of life issue. And it's not been a small particular interest. We have heard from other areas regarding industrial noise problems, et cetera. I'm not happy the way council, or I'll take it upon myself, how I actually handled myself on council with the noise ordinance. I thought we could have done a better job, and it sat on this for quite some time, but I appreciate the efforts of my two colleagues at the end of the table. They had a lot to deal with down there on that committee. But like I said, Brian, we appreciate everything you've done, but I think this is a good compromise, and I don't think you're going to see a big difference in just 5 decibels. It's really not going to.
What if when she shows up next week?
Well, whoever spearheads that group, maybe Ms. Wells or somebody else, I don't like mentioning names up here, but they've had their chance. If she shows up next week, then she's going to have to start calling the police department, because I think we're going to.
All right.
Okay. Well, Brian, I'll talk to you after the meeting if you like. Okay, we just going to go back and forth. Okay.
Mayor Coulter, I've got a number of pretty specific questions for our sound engineer. And
Sure.
I'm not sure if you want them answered now or if there's a motion on the table.
We should wait till we have a motion on the table. That would be good. These are questions of clarification now, technically, is what we should be doing. If there's no other questions, a motion would be in order for us to have the rest of this debate. Is there a motion?
Yeah,
Is there a
just a
motion?
second,
Sorry.
I would move that we adopt the ordinance amending Section 2-96 through 2-106 of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances.
Support.
It is moved by Galloway, supported by Piana. All right. Now, discussion and additional questions.
I guess I'll start with the biggest question for me, and I talked to Councilwoman Piana about this yesterday, and I think really only the sound engineer can answer this, and it's what the last resident who spoke brought up as well. There are changes to the way that we'll be measuring. There's an average time rather than a point source. So there is a recommendation that we change the way that things are measured in addition to the decibel level. And I'm wondering how those two things interact. And well, I'll start there. How do those two things interact? Would one suffice over the other?
Okay, so your first question is, how are the measurements themselves being changed?
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, the language for the measurements is changed, like I said, to reflect how the measurements are currently being conducted.
They're currently taking a 1 minute average?
Yes, that is correct. They are currently taking a 1 minute average, and you need 2 measurements to verify that there is a exceedance or to verify what the sound level is. So based on that practice, I constructed language in the ordinance to reflect that. Now, if your question about the average, how does that affect the sound level? In essence, if you have a momentary spike in sound, the sound level itself might measure as much as 80 dB, depending on what the activity is. But by averaging that sound level over a minute, that peak level or that high level is averaged in with the ambient or the other existing sound level around it. So we could come down by 5, 10 dB or so in that period
So
of
if
time.
while you're measuring and the Red Wings score a goal and everyone yells, which is what I've heard, truly, I've heard people say that when when Buffalo Wild Wings gets really excited during playoff time, they know when the Red Wings score and they don't even have to have the TV on.
True.
But that wouldn't be the point at which someone's evaluated.
Well, it depends on how long the cheering takes place and
Fair enough.
how loud that
Which
is.
goal it is,
But,
right?
But overall, and like I said, this is the way Ferndale's currently measuring. They average over a 1 minute period. They have to verify with a second measurement. Okay? So a 1 minute period for an average sound level is not terribly long. It's long enough that peak sound levels will come down. But you could also compare it against other government bodies such as the FHA or other government bodies where they take hour-long average levels. Now, granted, they're dealing with more consistent levels of sound, typically air, some sort of vehicle traffic or the like, which tends to be more consistent, less peaks, less valleys.
I guess my next question has to do with what I believe are, if I'm reading this correctly, the changes to the types of sound waves. Were we always measuring A and C? You can see I wasn't on the subcommittee.
Yes, the sound levels are currently measured on the A scale or the C scale. And if you're not familiar, the A scale emulates human hearing at medium, moderate types of sound levels. Okay, our hearing is constructed in such a way, the size of our ears, the mechanics of way our middle ear works in connection to our inner ear. We hear some frequencies more readily than other frequencies. And consequently, just as a point of interest, our hearing is very sensitive at about 1,000, 2,000 hertz, which is also where a baby cries. Our hearing is less sensitive at lower frequencies. C weighting emulates our hearing at higher sound levels where our response actually flattens out and we hear low frequencies a little bit better.
Do either the A or the C address some of the complaints that we've heard specifically about bass?
C weighting would more closely address bass type music, but that's the way the ordinance is currently written.
And do our current instruments, have you seen our current instruments?
Yes.
Do they in your opinion, adequately measure these two things, or should we be investing in some new measurement devices?
No, I believe that the equipment that the city has measures both of these accurately.
I guess those are my main questions. It seems like it is a reasonable change, yet acknowledging that there is absolutely no way to make it so quiet, you know, that you might as well be living in Washington Township. These are different choices that people make to live in urban versus rural environments. And I was skeptical about this. I'm glad that I had a chance to talk with you. I'm glad that I talked with Melanie yesterday. I think it's a reasonable change, but it has to be enforced well and be a long-term change. I don't want to revisit this again in 2 years. I think we should also, our planning director was in the room earlier, I'm not sure if Derek is still here, this needs to be a conversation with the Planning Commission. Because as was stated earlier, these conversations and questions and concerns from residents started during the special land use, conversation. So if we've got, on one hand, the city telling a business owner, no, you need to put in lower walls because that's the aesthetic that we prefer, and then on the other hand, we've got a sound ordinance that just clearly can't be adhered to with lower walls. We're fighting against ourselves, and we're putting the business owner in the middle. That is absolutely unfair to the business owner. So our planning director probably just heard me because I saw him running down the hall. Sorry, Derek. But if there's any way that this can be integrated into a process that already exists, whether it's our special land use permitting process, whether it's conversations about sidewalk cafes, I don't know what it is. But rather than recreating the wheel, rather than making business owners apply for another permit, pay for another permit, if there's a way that this can be rolled into something that's already being evaluated and have a consistent set of guidelines for how that's evaluated. If it's a certain number of citations, means you can't, regardless of who you are, you can't have, a sidewalk cafe. I don't know what the answer is. It just needs to be consistent and consistently enforced as we move forward with the city master plan, the downtown master plan.
And I will say that this motion specifically addressed the decibel level. The second motion, if made, would address the procedures. The permitting. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Christ.
Mayor, I just wanted to inquire from the consultant and confirm that your recommendations here regarding maximum permissible levels makes a recommendation to reduce both the A-weighted and the C-weighted schedules that are currently in place.
Yes, as it pertains to residential properties.
The question's really for the audience. I just wasn't sure everybody appreciated that you were making a suggestion to reduce both A and C weight. Yes.
I guess I will just say this. When I moved to Ferndale 20 years ago, noise downtown wasn't a problem. Parking wasn't a problem. The stress on our law enforcement services to protect downtown wasn't a problem because there was nobody downtown. And so, in a sense, and I'm not making light of these issues, but in a sense, these are good problems to have because these are the problems that arise in a vibrant and successful downtown. And so if you got to have problems, I guess these are the problems to have. And so our job up here, which is very difficult, is to balance our desire for a prosperous downtown and to do everything that we can to make sure people like Mr. Kramer continue to find this a friendly and profitable place to do business against the needs of the residents who have been here and who deserve some peace. I understand the applause that occurred in support of Mr. Kramer. I think that that's probably shared by the city and, frankly, by the people up here on council. We all appreciate the investment, Mr. Kramer, that you and other business owners have made in downtown. And so I wanted to applaud as well, believe me. And when I go to Diablo's, I especially want to applaud most of the things that I buy there. So somebody also said, so maybe you could just tweak it. I want to tell you my personal perspective is this is a tweak. The consultant himself said, we are significantly above the noise levels acceptable in most towns in southeast Michigan, and even with this change, we're still above average is what I'm hearing. And so this is an attempt to make, in my opinion, a moderate and reasonable change that might afford residents some additional peace, but I'm hoping will not cause a hardship to Mr. Kramer, you, or the other business owners. And I know some people said, I don't want to revisit this again. I'm open to doing this. If Brian, you tell me, after this summer season that this was just unworkable, that this didn't work, I am open to looking at this again. But when I sit here today, this seems like a relatively modest and reasonable step to take, and I'm willing to try it. Additional comments or questions? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Certainly. Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. The second drafted motion, if council is so inclined, would go to the permitting issue. And so is there willingness on the part of council to make that motion?
Yes, hang on. Which one is it? I move to deny ordinance, what number is that?
It would be 1115.
1115, adding for outdoor amplified sound, section 7501 through 7514 of the Ferndale Code of Ordinance.
You meant adopt, not deny, correct?
I said deny.
You said deny.
Why do we even need to make a motion?
I would just deny it?
But why do we even need to make a motion?
There's no motion on the floor, so
Okay.
there's really nothing to deny.
Okay.
You're not moving this, obviously.
No, I'm not going to.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to move it just so that we can discuss it and decide to vote it down or table it or do something with it, but just to explain to the citizens what we've been working on. Sorry.
No, you don't.
I would move that we adopt the ordinance adding Article 21, outdoor amplified sound, to Section 7501 through 7514 of the Ferndale Code of Ordinances.
Is there support?
I'll support for discussion.
Moved and supported. Now, discussion on that item.
Just so people know, our consultant, our staff, Councilwoman Piana, and I looked at a two-pronged approach to this situation. The first was refining and reducing the definition of what permissible sound was and how it was measured, et cetera, which was just passed. And the second section of this was to actually create a permitting process for amplified outdoor sound at restaurants with three tiered approach, depending on what type of equipment was used. This would require essentially a site plan for noise that would be approved, and in some instances reapproved or approved annually or regularly. I think this is not a bad ordinance to have in our back pocket. Should what we have in place right now prove unsuccessful at addressing the problem, but it is an extra burden on business that I think we have to be mindful of, and the cost and the time is not just measured in interaction with the city, but things that the business owner has to do. So I have some concerns about taking this next step, although I think it would really get directly at the problem. I'm a bit undecided on this, but I'm certainly open to hearing what other folks have to say.
I'm on similar path with Councilman Galloway. I think this was an excellent output from our sound engineer and has definitely put us on a path. If we need to choose to take the permitting, I am definitely against adding another regulation, burdening businesses as well as city staff to implement this whole permitting process. With that said, there are some key components in these ordinance that we can do to educate current business owners as well as help new business owners come into Ferndale, like Councilman Baker suggested. In particular, the DDA, when we went through some of these sound things, for example, Club 9, they were new business owners and new to the downtown, and they weren't really clear on what the noise ordinance was for the current noise ordinance. So the DDA has a role to play to continue educating new business owners and current business owners what those sound parameters are, as well as the Planning Commission, the Planning Department, and really addressing those concerns up front based off of what the business would like to do versus what is allowed in the residential area near the downtown. So for me, this is a really good practice to start doing based off of the educational approach, and so which is why I'm in support of using it more as guidelines and education versus a permitting regulatory process.
Through the chair, I would agree that I would not vote in favor of this for several reasons, but the focus of our downtown as we've been growing and evolving and maturing has really largely been on design, how pedestrians interact with their environment, how stores interact with shoppers, what the feel of your downtown should be, how to make people comfortable and safe. We're now significantly intensifying our uses downtown. Where we may have had an art supply store, for example, we now have Rosie O'Grady's. So that focus on design at both the DDA and the Planning Commission level, I think, needs to evolve. We're putting business owners in a position where if you design something that meets our aesthetic guidelines, it doesn't, to me, seem that we need to evolve past just aesthetics. We need to now begin to understand how we are impacting parking. This is exactly why the DDA has a parking committee, and how we're impacting sound and quality of life. Months ago, Brian Kramer, he's left us now, suggested several fairly radical things to address parking and noise problems, including moratoriums on new liquor licenses, including different parking requirements. Right now we have a blanket parking requirement in our downtown that says if you're within the CBD, you don't need to provide your own parking because our lots will accommodate you. We've clearly outgrown that. So what I'll be looking to do on the Planning Commission, and what we've already talked about several times, is balancing aesthetics with quality of life and what can really fit, what our downtown can accommodate. And I hope that the DDA Design Committee and that our staff people on the Design Appearance Review Committee will start to take maybe some of these concerns that we're hearing now into account when we have new projects coming up to head some of these things off. I mean, this could have been, Brian had a half a dozen different suggestions a year ago for how this could have been addressed, and we were all kind of afraid to take that leap and say, sure, put in those screening trees or make that wall higher. I fear that this is just going to keep coming back and back and back from both sides if we don't do something to significantly address our intensification of uses.
Other comments on the motion? Oh, yes, City Manager Mark Wallenweber.
Just wanted to indicate that after participating in a couple of these meetings, but not certainly been involved for all of it, many of the council comments reflect the staff input into this process to date. I think, as pointed out by Councilmember Piana, that the development of these guidelines and potential implementation is certainly a secondary step. Would not be recommended by staff at this point to do it, but it's good to outline, a process. Certainly, we wouldn't have the staff, nor would the police be able to respond on that kind of basis, and it might end up we have to have baseline noise ordinance things per facility, but it's something that you could take as a further step after further discussion down the road. But I don't think it's necessary to proceed that way this far, and I think that reflects what the council's input and certainly the committee's input into the process was so far.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Sherry Wells again. It's never been about the patios in and of themselves to us. I know of no one who's complained because people are cheering because the Detroit team won. In fact, unfortunately, the Detroit teams are not all doing so well that we're bothered by cheering. I sat through the DDA board meeting where they discussed both ordinance proposals, and they have very sound reasons, and so did Derek Delacourt, for not passing this kind of thing, the permitting process and all that. I walk through downtown a lot, as you know, and the customers, it's when the noise level is increased because of the music, that's when it gets obnoxious. But when it's just ordinary customers just talking to each other, most of the time even ignoring the TV and probably the music too, it's fine. It does not bother me at all. And I like the fact that if there's a reasonable noise level downtown, each one of the places that has a patio or a sidewalk cafe, their customers can enjoy being there without being bothered by others. And it's never been about the patios in and of themselves. I've noticed, I'm sure others have, that they're not that full this summer because it's too hot for any of us to be outdoors. So if I was sitting up there, I'd vote no on this one too. But I think it's always good to have some possible stuff, and education is a wonderful thing. It's a prevention, and I like prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. No further discussion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council members Piana?
No.
Baker?
No.
Galloway?
No.
Lennon?
No.
Mayor Coulter?
No. Thank you. That item does not pass. All right. Next order of business is regular agenda item B. This one is I'm a lot more excited to introduce. It gives me great pleasure to bring up to the microphone, if you don't mind, for consideration of an employment contract, April McGrath, for the position of Ferndale City Manager. Good evening, April. Is there a motion on the floor?
I would move that we approve the employment agreement between April McGrath and the City of Ferndale, effective August 1st, 2011, subject to satisfactory completion of the medical exam, and authorize the mayor and city council, city clerk to sign that document.
Support.
Moved by Galloway, supported by Baker. Before I ask for comments from here, April, I'll just give you an opportunity to say a few words if you like.
I just want to again thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very much looking forward to coming to Ferndale, and my first day here will be Monday, August 1st, just in time for Mark to go on vacation. And I want to thank him very much too for keeping me abreast on things that are happening. Hopefully that will help me hit the ground running, and I'll be spending more time with all of you as well to get started on, I'm sure, a lot of things you have on your list to do. So again, I thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, April. Any comments?
I'd just like to say welcome aboard, and we're going to keep you busy. But we'll look forward to talking to you.
Thank you.
Right after this first.
For folks that don't know, April is now the Assistant City Manager in the city of Ypsilanti, which in a lot of ways is like Ferndale, a vibrant downtown, reinventing itself. They're in the shadows of U of M. We're sort of in the shadows of Detroit, but they've managed to brand themselves much as we have. And April comes with a lot of experience, most recently in Ypsilanti, but before that in other communities as well. And I'm really glad to have you on board. All right, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council members Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That concept is good. And just so the residents know, shortly after April starts, we're going to do a community open house. We'll come up with details so that everyone in the community has an opportunity to come by and talk to her personally and say hello. So stay tuned for more details about that. Next order of business is C, consideration of concessionaire license for Robert Gorjeff of Motor City Franks.
Your Honor, if you don't mind, I'd like to kind of address 7C and 7D at the same time. They are both applications for concessionaires licenses to operate hot dog carts within the downtown area, which means they fall under the definition of concessionaires, and which means they require council's approval of both the ability to operate and for council to set the locations and hours for that operation. The reason these are on the regular agenda is both applicants have requested to operate in the vicinity of the Rust Belt Market as well as other areas. Mr. Georgia's application came in 3 weeks prior to Ms. Mendoza's application, so it'd be up to council how they want to handle the request to operate at the same place. Now, like I said, Mr. Georgiev actually has permission from Rust Belt to operate mostly on their little triangle of sidewalk that belongs to that building as opposed to the city.
Yeah.
And as well, he wants to kind of be able to have the ability to go around the block. Ms. Mendoza, along with requesting that area, is also requesting 3 other areas which no one else has currently requested, primarily near 306 West 9 Mile, which is Huntington Bank, 195 West 9 Mile, which is the Ferndale Arts Building, and in front of Greenleaf Body Works on the east side of 9 Mile. Certainly you can ask the city attorney, there's nothing in the ordinance that prohibits you from letting 2 vendors operate in the same area, so it's really your call. You have a lot of discretion here.
Thank you. And question of clarification, have both of these applicants been through the review, the full review process internally? It's my understanding that maybe they haven't yet, right?
There are outstanding items for both.
Okay. So would it behoove us to, if in fact council is inclined to support these, to support them with the caveat that they complete, and what would the language be? What kind of review? Contingent upon all necessary approvals
from all departments.
From all departments.
And actually, the specific language is contained in the proposed resolutions.
Is contained in the proposed resolution.
As to what's outstanding.
Yep. Is it? Let's make clear of that.
Do you want me to make a motion?
Yes, please.
I will do it for the first one. I move to adopt resolution granting concessionaire license for Robert George Jeff of Motor City Franks to operate a hot dog cart at the Rust Belt Market and around the periphery of the market up to the pedestrian alley next to Rent-A-Center on the southwest corner of West 9 Mile Road and Woodward Avenue from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday and 10 a.m. until 2 a.m. Friday through Sunday for a period of 1 year contingent upon satisfactory result of police investigation of applicant's history, submittal of surety bond approved by city attorney, and payment of license fee. Support.
Moved by Piana, supported by Baker. Questions or comments on this item?
Well, my only question is, do we need to address that location issue? I believe in other cities, people are granted permission to operate a cart in a specific location, and then once they get that approval, they're the only one. Is it good to have competition? I mean, we've not had, I think we've had one hot dog
We've
cart
had one dog cart, yeah.
too long, but, or can we have everybody located at, I mean, can we have 6 hot dog carts at the Rust Belt Market, or,
hot dogs.
how, any direction?
Well, Your Honor, if I could, in the absence of regulatory language in that section of the ordinance, it would be my suggestion that you not pick and choose which applicant, but rather, if you wish to have that type of limitation in the future, consider ordinance amendment to that chapter.
Okay. May the best Frank win.
I was going to just say, may the best dog win, and well, and if they're both good, they both win. I guess at this point, you know.
Right, and I think it's appropriate to take applications as they come in. So applicants who want put on a reserve on their spot first should get first dibs. So.
But I'm sorry, isn't that just the opposite of what the city attorney just said?
I'm sorry.
Well, that's what we're just voting in for we're assigning the specific spot. That's what the motion is, assigning a specific spot for Motor City Franks at the Rust Belt, correct?
That is the motion on the floor.
That is the motion on the floor.
Right, but did I misunderstand
That
what the
was
city
in
attorney
his
said?
application, I understand. And you would not be limiting it to a particular vendor.
A single particular vendor.
To a single vendor. You'd be approving the location sought by Mr. Georgioff with respect to the location in his application. And once you consider the other application, you may decide how you wish to address that person's location. To the extent that there is permission in both of those general areas, they would be allowed to be there so long as there's not a obstruction of the right-of-way.
Which is sort of the opposite of calling dibs on something. So,
Right.
I guess.
This is for 1 year,
Understood.
and then they have to reapply. So at that time, we can reconsider. Since this isn't, we've only had one other hot dog vendor, approximately, 2.5, 3 years ago?
Correct.
So we could revisit that if this particular situation doesn't work out in favor of the businesses.
I guess I'm happy to approve what's been requested here. In what did Councilman Galloway say, something about may the best dog win? As we move to the next motion, or the next issue, I guess I don't see a reason why there couldn't be more than one vendor in an area. Is there a compelling reason why we shouldn't have?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the attorney for clarification. We're granting use in the public right-of-way, assuming it doesn't block. If they were to be on private property, they would need
the permission of that
property owner, and that could be this,
And they have that.
one of them has that.
The first
one of
one's
them is not yet. We're not sure.
Hi.
Hi, council members. I'm Charity Mendoza. I didn't want to cause any confusion with the multiple applications here. We don't want to cause any major rift or extreme competition. I haven't actually spoke with the other gentleman, the other vendor, but he's already conveyed that he's really willing to work with us, as are we. We don't want to fight over a spot. We definitely would love to be a part of the Rust Belt also. And it's something that we hope that we can work out together, because he's not always anticipating being available at all the times, as well as same thing with us and where we want to be. So I don't know if that helps at all.
Appreciate that. No hot dog wars out there.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that. So
Yeah.
if there's any questions I can answer, I'd be happy to. So.
Thank you. No,
Thank you.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming up. Yeah. All right, additional comments or questions? Yes, sir.
We've talked quite a bit about the aesthetics of the city, and I did agree that we probably could work out something. I'm going to be actually paying rent to the Rust Belt, and by name, the last name's George Jeffy.
Oh, you got it. Okay.
Sorry
Okay, I'm going to be paying rent to the Rust Belt for that particular corner.
Okay.
And that's because myself and Chris Best of the Rust Belt have agreed on kind of a criteria for this cart. We want it to be very old-fashioned. We want it to kind of be how you could put it on a 1955 style cart, white hats, aprons, bow ties, just to kind of bring in that whole part of the Rust Belt. I think it should go best for Chris to kind of hold that thing together in order to meet that criteria. So as long as we both work out a schedule, and I agree, there might be some times we can't be there, I think it should really be up to him, since he's actually developed that business of the Rust Belt, to hold that criteria that the Rust Belt has developed up to this point. So it needs to be kind of under his consideration that we both work under him. Again, I'm going to be paying rent for that private area, because that private area is a triangle that's really optimum for both of us. So if that agreement could be made by both of us, maybe a schedule worked out, that'd be probably the best way to handle it. I don't think you want two vendors on the same corner at the same time. If there's a possibility to open up the other corners across the street, which I think we're both trying to avoid is around the restaurant area, because that would be a kind of a conflict, then that might be a different opportunity. But I don't think we both want to, struggle to be on the same corner at the same time. But I still think that aesthetic criteria really needs to be kept. So
I'm going to be doing this primarily during Rust Belt hours. Some weekends I won't be able to do it. I extended my hours because I might want to dabble or try in some different areas, but by no intention do I want to put any other vendor out. My whole feeling here is that I think we can attract people to the city with this appearance. We've already agreed no plastic, all stainless, the right dress, the right criteria, just to look the part and to give people, we're not going to be selling hot dogs, or I'm not going to be anyway. I want to sell the image. I want to sell the feeling. When people come to me, I want to give that Disney quality. Everybody in the eyes, and I'm teaching my kids the same thing. I think it'd be a thriving business. I really want to be the benchmark for vendors. But again, I think Chris and I, trying to develop this together, have kind of agreed on that benchmark. We had naturally agreed. We didn't have to talk about it. That's what we want. So I think we all need to kind of consensus on that before we move along. So, but again, I'm going to be on that. I've put in my application first and intend to be on that corner most of the time.
Right.
Okay?
Thank you.
And that's the corner that's already part of the Rust Belt's property.
That's
right?
their property.
So whatever the
so-
Rust Belt wants to do on their property.
Right, and we couldn't
I don't have anything to say
put
about
those
their
same
aesthetics.
requirements on her to dress and to act because
No.
that's
Without
their
changing
property.
your-
No,
Right.
not at all.
As long as Ms. Mendoza complies with the ordinance, she can appear however she wants, the hot dog stand can look whatever, as long as it's on public property, but but stay off private property unless we reach some agreement. Okay.
All right. Further discussion or questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay. Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. And Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Good luck. Next item of business then, related, consideration of the concessionaire license for Charity Mendoza of Detroit Underdog.
And I will just mention, Your Honor, that the resolution as proposed in your packet does not include the area near the Rust Belt, so if you want to include that, you'll make that part of your motion. Does not.
Not, obviously not their private property, but not even area near the Rust Belt? Not currently.
That's not how I
how the
proposed the resolution, so if you want to change it, you just change it.
But the request was made.
The request was made for that area.
Well, and as I understand, through the chair to the city attorney, there's no basis in our ordinance for saying one hot dog concessionaire can be here, only one can be here.
No, absent some type of obstruction of the sidewalk. That's
So if we had 17 hot dog concessionaires that wanted to be at the Rust Belt corner, that would create a problem adding, one that would block the right of way, but two probably would not violate our ordinances.
And one would have the private permission, the private property permission, and one would be public right of way, yes.
So, let's see here, what was the language from the,
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
not good hot dogs on the market.
Choose the recommended motion and just add the area.
I'll try it.
All right.
I would move to adopt. What?
You know,
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know what, I think I've got something
Oh, go ahead.
pulled together, if you don't mind. Let's see here, back up a second. I would move that we adopt the resolution granting concessionaire license for Charity Mendoza of Detroit Underdog to operate a hot dog cart on city sidewalks primarily near 306 West 9 Mile, Huntington Bank, 195 West 9 Mile, Ferndale Arts Building, along the periphery but not on the private property of the Rust Belt Market, and at 251 and 253 East 9 Mile from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. Friday through Sunday for a period of 1 year contingent upon satisfactory result of police investigation of applicant's history, submittal of surety bond approved by the city attorney, and payment of the license fee.
Did you also include the 251 and 253 East 9 Mile?
Yeah, I believe I did. I didn't
Okay.
know you do.
All right, sorry.
Moved by Galloway. Is there support?
Support.
supported by Lennon. Any additional comments or discussion?
I guess my only question is, does that itemization that Councilman Galloway just made, are those all of the outstanding requirements for this applicant as well, or were there additional outstanding requirements that his enumeration would have been?
The general contingent upon meeting all specified requirements is sufficient.
But that's not what he said, which is why I wanted.
I just was trying to make them identical, but maybe that's not appropriate. The 2 hot dog concessionaire license.
Yeah, we just made it consistent with the first, he just made it consistent.
They don't have the same outstanding items.
Exactly, which was my question. If the motion referred to the specific items that the first concessionaire had outstanding, I don't think they're the same ones that the second concessionaire has outstanding.
Oh, okay.
Hence Sherilyn's broad statement of contingent upon meeting all specified requirements.
So can we simply add "and contingent upon meeting all specific requirements" at the end of Councilman Galloway's motion?
Certainly.
Okay, that covers all our bases then? All right.
That would cover it.
Then that's what I meant to say.
It's never easy. All right, is there further discussion on this item? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. That concludes our regular agenda for this evening. Next item is council liaison reports. Are there any liaison reports of council members this evening?
I do, but I can put them into my call to council. So
Okay.
wrap them in there.
Very good. Then that would bring us to call to council. Lieutenant Wilson is here, I think, representing the police department tonight. Anything going on? We sure sounded like something was going on.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor, Council.
Good evening.
No new real business, but tonight we had the bad news and good news type scenario. We unfortunately had a violent armed robbery that took place about 7 o'clock this evening at Ferndale Pharmacy. 3 suspects came in, robbed the people. It was, again, a violently done crime. Our officers did respond. In the end, after a foot chase and vehicle chase, all 3 suspects are in custody. Minor injuries to a few people, but nothing severe. So, again, some criminals had the audacity to come into our town, and our guys and women, along with Royal Oak, Oak Park, Detroit, and Hazel Park Police, worked together and made 3 arrests.
Awesome. Great job. Thank you very much. Great job. Thank you.
That's my corner, Lieutenant. I've been anxious up here all night. Thank you so much for that update.
I see our fire chief back there. Chief Sullivan, anything for the good of the cause this evening? No, sir. Thank you. Julie Hall? Nothing this evening. Wow. Everybody's fading on me fast. Derek is no longer here. Byron is no longer here.
No, Byron's still here.
Where is he? Oh, my gosh. Oh, pardon me, Byron.
Straight in front of you.
Byron Patel, Department of Public Works. I'm telling you. Good thing. Thanks. Everything's good? When you don't notice somebody, something must be going well. Right. Thank you. Sorry about that. City Clerk Sherilyn Thomas.
Quickly, I just wanted to report that at our annual conference, I was reappointed to the Board of Directors for the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks. So, thank you. I'll be serving as Education Chair for the next 2 years.
Excellent. We recognize the talent that is in Ferndale. Congratulations.
Thank you.
City Manager Mark Wallenweber, anything this evening?
Yes, sir. Just one thing. One, congratulations to the police for their fine work on this and the cooperation shown with other departments. 2, if you're a little warm this evening, part of the air conditioning system is down. That's the bad news. The other bad news is it's 8 to 10 weeks away. Byron has secured some pricing from Siemens about it. I think it's going to wait because I've asked our consultant, Siemens, who handles all of our buildings, to provide us some cost information on going green in terms of our replacement of equipment. Now is a unique time. We'd be replacing all of the air conditioning equipment. whether we can do heat pumps like the library did with geothermal, may be possible, but it will add significantly the cost. But as we put that information together for you, it'll probably be beyond my time, but we're beyond, we couldn't, if we ordered them tonight, we couldn't get them in time for the cooling season anyway, so we'll be suffering through it perhaps with Byron's help and fans, but I do think it's worth taking a look at, particularly in our community here, the interest in going green with the library having done it. I think it will be well worth it. Second thing, and I think I'll let the mayor speak to this in terms of, I'm very excited about a DTE GM grant, but you can talk about that, especially with our Green Fair coming up. And then finally, I'll say this next time, but I will also say it today. We're really glad that April's on board. I think you made an excellent selection in terms of the process, and we'll be working to bring her up to speed in the meantime. And she can call me when I come back from Peru in mid-August anyway, if necessary. So, thank you.
Appreciate it. City Attorney, Mr. Chris, anything else?
I'd just like to congratulate Ms. McGrath again, and look forward to working with you in August. That's it.
Thank you. Councilwoman Baker.
Well, I guess first the easy one. April, welcome. Thank you. I think you got a flavor for our community tonight. All of our recent, at least, council meetings, not only do we stream them online, but they're archived online. So I'm sure you've got hours of watching ahead of you. My mom's the only person who watches those archived things, I swear. I guess my request this evening, one of the frustrations that I was hearing from downtown businesses, and one of my frustrations as well as we were working to resolve this noise issue in the last 6 months, were some of the, I guess, miscommunications and missteps that were happening. It seemed like people weren't always on the same page or in the right room together, that maybe this meeting would happen over here, but you had an essential person missing from that meeting, so you didn't get satisfaction or your questions answered, which just heightened frustrations all around. And as we work to implement what we've just passed this evening, it would be a request to Lieutenant Wilson to take it back to the chief, and city manager, if you would mind conveying it to our DDA director. I would hope that those two staff people in particular would spend some time with our downtown business owners and with those meters doing some testing to see, you know, what does it really mean when something gets turned up or down, when a door is open or closed. It's going to take some time for our business owners to understand exactly where they need to be setting things. And unfortunately, it's going to mean it's going to take some staff time as well. But I'm hopeful that they'll be able to figure out and comply with the new rules. I would just ask for some patience and also some collaboration and education as we get this up and running to help people comply. They've been working together well when complaints are made, but maybe we can head off some of the complaints. So.
Thank you. Councilwoman Piana.
I have a couple things. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for working on the sound issue. I know it took a lot longer than I had anticipated, as well as the residents. We had some key changes in leadership this year since November that I think caused some of those delays in a millage vote. So a lot of competing priorities, and so that doesn't mean that we weren't interested in making sure we got it done in a timely way. It just sort of fell out. It just kind of happened. So thank you to everybody involved. Welcome, April. I can't wait to unleash my ideas on you.
Watch out.
And look forward to working with you as well. I have two announcements. First, I wanted to give an update about the Woodward Avenue Action Association Transit-Oriented Development Task Force. It's a mouthful. I wanted to say we convened, elected leaders from Ferndale to Birmingham convened last September to look at how we can improve planning and economic development along the Woodward corridor to become better attractors of transit, whatever comes up up Woodward to 8 Mile, that we are able to bring it past 8 Mile. And since we came together, we have received $47,000 in grant money to help these communities look at how do we coordinate and standardize some of the things that can help us achieve what we have called linear city, and planning a linear city between Ferndale and Birmingham. So I've been really excited to participate in this group. It's very collaborative, and we're continuing to move forward, and we'll have something solid to bring back to every council in November, December, on what we could be doing from each city's point of view and helping achieve the linear city goals and objectives and visions that this task force develops. My other announcement is a heads up through the Michigan Suburbs Alliance and Regional Energy Office. And I've been asked to encourage the city of Ferndale to be a community that submits their desire to participate in a new grant opportunity called from the Department of Energy called the Rooftop Solar Challenge. The Suburbs Alliance and the Regional Energy Office will be contacting cities to see if they are interested in participating in a statewide grant. And it really is to look at developing and implementing a transparent, consistent, and expedient permitting process for rooftop PV systems. And so they're looking to standardize that across communities. And it also looks at planning and zoning, so removing restrictions and incorporating favorable provisions in our building codes and land use policies to allow solar on our buildings. And so cities are going to need, that are part of the Suburbs Alliance and Regional Energy Office, are going to need to submit their support by August. And so I wanted to give a heads up to our new city manager that I think this is something fits nicely into the city of Ferndale's vision, and I think we've always been early adopters, and I think this is something that we should do. So when that comes down the line, April and Derek will be informed how the city can participate. Pretty exciting stuff going in on a statewide grant, so I hope to be part of the strong pool of partners that we're helping pull together.
Thank you. Councilman Galloway.
Not too much this evening. April, we look forward to getting started here on August 1st, and that's about it for me.
And as for me, as the city manager alluded to, we did get some exciting news. The city of Ferndale has been awarded, and this was in a competitive process, but we have been awarded by DTE an electric vehicle charging station. Two electric vehicle charging stations, which we're very excited about. And so they'll probably be in the Withington lot area, but that is all being defined and worked out. But as soon as we have more plans to show you, we will. But it's very exciting. It was a competitive process, and we think Ferndale is the perfect place to come and recharge your electric vehicle, and just another bonus and another reason for folks to come here. So very excited about that, and more news to follow on that. April, again, welcome. We look so forward to working with you. Watch out for Melanie. She's got a lot to give you. And also, Mark Wallenweber, this means you have one final meeting with us, right?
Yes.
Wow, we're really sad to see you go. We'll save all that stuff for the next meeting, but thank you for all of your help. And with that, meeting adjourned.
I don't get to talk?
Oh my gosh, I skipped you.
It's all right.
I skipped Byron and I skipped you this evening.
Really
How's him and Lennon?
You get the last
vote tonight. Wow. You get the last vote. I found you did. Now
No, I don't have anything.
Wow.
April, welcome aboard. Lieutenant, good job tonight. As usual by the men and women of the PD. That's it.
Thank you. And with that, you want to hit the gavel, adjourn us?
Yeah, why don't we?
Yeah.
This meeting is adjourned.
I don't know how the hell I did that. It's apparently people here direct.